Hello, and this is a book review, interesting ideas, some takeaways that I found in this book, Us versus Them, The Failure of Globalism. That sounds pretty good. The name, I like the name. It's not much about the failure of globalism, it's more about us versus them. That's the majority of what he wrote was about. So it's always a quick review. This book, I'll probably give it about 3 stars. So there is some good information. It's pretty quick. He's going pretty quickly through a bunch of different countries, some history, and some predictions about the future. Very fast pace, so it's good in that sense. But on the other is the information he proposes, or the way he analyzed the information could be better. So 3, maybe even 3.5. But maybe I wrote something in the notes, some things more about the book. But overall, it's short, to the point, but I didn't really like his points. That's why. So let's see the notes. The first one is, the next crisis is between winners and losers. Sorry about that. Countries that don't have a safety net will suffer greatly. So he predicts that the next crisis will be between winners and losers, which is like usually what happens. But the countries that do not have those safety nets, which usually means third world countries, they will suffer even greater. So in other words, like the United States might survive this, but less developed nations might collapse. We have chapter 2 here. The moving of people to big cities is only beneficial if government could handle the change. That include infrastructure, hospitals, etc. So there is more and more people are moving to big cities. This is like a trend in the last few decades. Now the problem is, well, not the problem, but only if cities can support this change, only then it's beneficial. But again, some developed, or not developed, but some developing countries have issues with infrastructure, hospitals, and all those services. Next one. In Nigeria, there is a part Muslim and a part Christian population, so they decided to have a turns in presidency, which is, I thought it's pretty cool way. So they have both Muslims and Christians in the country. What they did is they decided to do turns in presidency, so everyone has his own turn. I forgot how exactly, but if you want to look at a little forward, but just I like the idea. Next, 90% of Saudi government income is coming from crude oil sales. That was a staggering number. 90% of the income is coming from crude oil. Next one is, in Russia, about a third of the population works for the government and such. So the more people work for the government usually means how the economy is doing. Usually, if they're like dictatorships, what they do to support their citizens is they employ a big number of the citizens for the government. In Russia, it's about a third, which is considered a lot, I guess. Next one is, in China, the middle class is growing and attracting higher wages, which led some manufacturing to move to East Asia due to high costs. So China, the middle class in China is growing, and as a result, they attract higher wages, which leads to higher production costs, and therefore some of that manufacturing are going overseas, not overseas there, but to East Asia, because it's still cheaper there. But what we see here is that China is starting to have more and more problems. Next one is, taxing robots would also mean that we need to tax machinery, ? Or it will cause jobs to go overseas. And he's like, proposing a question. If you're taxing robots, which is like robots that could walk, for example, or make deliveries, does that mean that you tax machinery, any machinery? Because where's the differences between a machine to a robot? Of course, you can find differences, but when you go deeper, what is the difference? But other way, it will cause, if you do have taxes, it will cause more manufacturing to go overseas where there isn't tax on machinery or robots. And we have the last one there. Trump didn't create us versus them. Us versus them created Trump. So he's like saying that we have the same problem here in the United States, us versus them. And some people blaming Trump for that polarization of the citizens. But he claims that us versus them created Trump. So that was the first, what usually happens is us versus them. And this is also what he says that happens usually in other countries. Usually it starts us versus them, and then the population creates or elect those officials that will identify with their idea. So that's it for notes. And again, there isn't too much notes. It's pretty fast paced. It's hard to take notes sometimes, but overall, again, 3 stars. I would maybe give it a 4. I would think about it, but it just doesn't deserve a 4 for some reason, as I mentioned. Anyway, that's it.